And how's it going, everyone? And welcome to No Fun Allowed. Today, I want to talk about starting your campaigns because we have all heard the tropes of starting in a tavern and you wake up in a jail cell. There is so many ways you can start a campaign, and I just wanted to go over ways we can approach that, ways we can implement it, and make it feel awesome and not lame. Joining me today are two incredible patrons of mine, Galahad and Jamie. Go ahead and say hi, people.
Hello there.
Hi. Yeah, so let's kick this whole thing off. So, starting your campaign is, of course, the big deal because presumably that's how the whole adventure kicks off, right? So, one thing I wanted to ask is for you all is when you start the campaign, is the quest right there from the start? Is the end all be all right there? Do they get told they have to save the kingdom and slay the dragon? Or is the start of the campaign more of a gradual, slow burn?
Who should take it first?
Up to you.
Um, well, I think I like more the gradual stuff because especially since the party starts at level one, I don't think they should have the whole thing set up from the beginning. I know where it's gonna go, but I don't think they should be a part of it yet. I think they should like grow as part of the story as well. And what I did for my first and only campaign I'm running, I set up they met up at a harbor and they all needed to go somewhere across the sea and they met at a ship. One of them had a ship they and needed a crew, and so all the others joined as a crew without having to pay because they didn't have any money. And yeah, that's how they met.
Okay. What about you, Jamie?
Um, so I will, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I will start like small. You get like your kind of small time villain that the party knows about, and then as you progress, you defeat their minions, and then work your way up. You defeat the small time boss, and then you get the twist of, oh, this isn't even where it ends though, and that's when you build off there, and eventually you can get up to the higher level, the big stuff, the world ending stuff, and eventually make your way to the big you're saving the world kind of stakes.
Okay. So, the gradual slow burn is definitely, more organic because, once again, you tell level one players, okay, you got to save the world. They're really not, up for the challenge, as it were. That might give
And a
them
lot
a
of
sort of drive, but
Yeah, a lot of what you see too, if you put too big of a problem in front of too low level of a party, is a lot of pushback. Like, well, why are they making us do it? There's like wizards around who are way stronger than we are, and it kind of the building up sort of thing really helps with that of getting to, okay, this is why we're the ones that have to do this.
okay. Yeah, I certainly agree that I think that, more often than not, you don't want to exposition dump and you don't want to put into the idea of, okay, there's a world ending dragon or this lich is going to ruin everything. You got to go right now. Go, go, go. I do like the idea of, tackling things, tackling one challenge after the next. But another question we had is when we start these campaigns, do you start off with your players knowing each other and being already having been a group well established and now they're kicking off, or is everyone just a random hobo that somehow met each other?
Jimmy, want to take this one first, or
Sure, yeah. I've actually run two games, and I have had one of each. One where the campaign kind of started before with a different DM, and then I took over. So the party was already established. So that was really nice to, when you're first starting out DMing, is to have something taken off your plate like that. The responsibility of figuring out how do I get these people to work together. And then my second one, it was not only that, but like players that I didn't know so well. And it was the crash course in how to get people to work together. So yeah, getting your party together, having to figure out how to motivate a group to get them. not to have someone be off in the corner. I'm just gonna go be the dark, mysterious stranger in the tavern. How do you rope everybody in?
Yeah. Well, for me, I would prefer greatly if they already met each other and knew each other from the start. They would make my life a lot easier.
It is
In,
easier.
yeah, before I started the campaign, I was like, "You guys sure don't want to meet each other? You don't want to know each other from the start?" Only two of them out of the six decided to know each other, and so I just tripped them all together in this ship for a month, and then I threw a hurricane at them, and it was fun. So after that, it was pretty much okay. There's like the odd character that doesn't go along. I mean, it goes along with the rest, but it's kind of on its own way. But mainly, it goes with the party. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take because I think that nowadays, because we put so much emphasis on character development and their backstories and all that, that a lot of players want to see these characters that are, super awesome, mysterious, whatever, and don't want to reveal them right away, but then over time they get shown off, and a lot of people
Hmm.
want that mystery to hold up for longer than just, the first session. Uh,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I personally, I'm okay with, having a character that is not there, from the start in regards of, what they actually had in their background. But a lot of people like to draw up, elaborate, 1 page backgrounds or even more. And, we definitely see that quite a lot. So, in regard to that, then, do you like that? You mentioned, of course, that you like when groups start together, when they've already got an established background, but your players object to it. But do you think it is on the players to start the adventure, or do you think that it's okay with dumping them into the adventure and just telling them, "Hey, you got to go"?
I mean, I think in the beginning at least, it's fine to dump them right in. Because otherwise they don't know what to do, where to go. Because everyone's gonna have a different objective, and it might not line up. So I think the beginning part is definitely okay to push them and nudge them more so than later on, which is also fine, and you'll have to do it sometimes. But I think the beginning is more justified.
Yeah. A lot of times when you start a campaign, you will have like new players and things like that, and that is oftentimes so like difficult. It's so awkward when you start like you're in a tavern and everyone's kind of like staring at each other like, hi, I'm a barbarian, and it can be like really hard to figure out how to get into character. So yeah, throwing something in front of them of like this is what's happening, and giving them an opportunity to not like think about how they would act, but just act. I think is really helpful when you're starting a campaign of giving them, okay, here's something you can do.
Yeah,
I
in the
think they
beginning,
also.
go on,
Oh, sorry.
go
I think that they also understand that. Like right in the beginning, they're not grateful, but they understand why we have to do it. Because otherwise, the
Hmm.
adventure is not gonna start.
Yeah, I mean, you should hopefully everyone should have a buy-in to the adventure and not be over reluctant Harry Potter players all the time, right? Hopefully, you
Yeah.
do have people that see adventure and then thus, thrust themselves into the adventure. I mentioned
A
it
mix is
before.
nice.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the beginning. The whole you start in a tavern thing. That one's been played to death, but at the same time, it's been so played to death that it's also funny to do it and all that stuff. But you can definitely, make your spin on that, right? You can have it where the players start in a tavern and then the tavern catches on fire. What do? You can throw just a unique little twist on it and get the players going and get them moving. And then as they rush outside, who's setting the place on fire? Or was it the cook in the kitchen? Or, you can have these things go on and you can push them together in an organic way, but makes them feel like they're, actively participating.
I mean,
Yeah.
didn't Dragon Heist it started with a tavern brawl?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dragon Heist does. I know Descent into Avernus. Also, you start out. You get a quest and then you go to a tavern. You essentially start in a
You
tavern.
essentially started that.
Mhm,
Yeah, and that's also another thing too is with these pre-made modules, a lot of times they do have these overarching, massive, uber elaborate plots, but for a lot of them, they just start off as simple. Your heroes are a bunch of bums that just somehow stumble together, or in the case of Descend to Avernus, there is a overarching, your group is a group for a reason, sort of thing.
mhm.
So, in regards to that, do you guys like the idea of group patrons right from the get go? Or do you think that's something that should be implemented over the course of time?
I haven't gotten a chance to use group patrons yet, but they seem really interesting to me in a really good way to get groups together and give them a motivation. Um, it can be the like you're being paid to do this by your patron, or they have dirt on you, or things like that. And it's a lot of things that you can play around with that I'm really looking forward to implementing in my future games.
I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. I haven't thought about it, but yeah, I think that's a fine way to start the campaign. But you can also introduce it at any time, I'm sure,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
part of a quest or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. You can take that idea of your players. Maybe if they're not fully self-driving, you just have them all be underlings for some boss, and the boss says, "Hey, go there
Hmm.
and do that," and then that spirals them into further adventures. And then, of course, having the patron there in the background is fuel source for more fun little side quest, or allows them get out of jail free cards or whatever else. And we see that in some adventures, but not to a so heavy-handed degree that it's in the way. But for example, being Tomb of Annihilation, right from the get-go, you are air quote working for someone, but it doesn't really pan out to be too much. But you can of course expand upon it as much as you want. And that's another thing too is I'm curious as regards of you all in regards to your campaign starts. When you are starting that campaign, are you planting a flag right there out in the open in the world and saying, "Hey, world, I'm running a game," and then people just flock to you all over? Or like, how do you approach actually getting people to start a campaign?
Um, well, I was lucky enough that I know a friend like in real life, and he had a group that he runs a different game of like a different role playing game. It's not D&D. Um, and I joined the group. They've been playing for like 3 years. I've been playing with them for like a couple months. He snuck me into in their campaign, and then from there I took a few players that I knew, and not everyone wanted to join mine, and then other people that have played with him before wanted to start a campaign with anyone, so they joined my campaign, and now we're six players.
And this
Yeah.
is your first and only campaign?
Person only. Yeah.
Okay. And Jamie, you had previously mentioned two campaigns, but yours was a little bit different, right?
Yeah, my very first one, I actually was working at a job where I had friends who liked D&D, and then I was living in an area where I had more friends that liked D&D. So I was really lucky that I was able to kind of pick from a pool of people and be like, "Hey, I want to DM my first campaign. Do you want to come over play D&D?" And um, luckily, the people that I asked said yes, and so that was a really good time to be able to play like with friends and people that I knew fairly well. And then my second game was right after I moved, so I didn't know anyone. No one at my job played D&D. I had to basically go out uh, into a random gaming group and be like, "Hey, I don't know you guys. You guys don't know me. Do any of you want to play D&D?" And I was able to get a few like random players, and I've done something similar now with Candlekeep one shots of going to the internet and saying, "Hey, internet, who wants to play just a session?" It's different from a campaign, but I think it has been really valuable to play D&D with people that you don't know very well, in addition to people that you are friends with, because you just learn like lots of different play styles and how to learn to work together with other people and what makes different kinds of people tick.
Yeah, for sure. D&D means so many different things to so many different people. You play with one group and they're all about the heavy RP, and then you play with the next group and they're a bunch of grognards that want to beat up orcs or whatever. So,
Hmm.
you definitely have those different play styles, and it is good to see what people like and what people don't like. And yeah, it's interesting. When I start my campaigns, I typically do what I said. I plant a flag in the ground and say, hey, I'm going to run a campaign. Who wants to play? And then some people flock. And over the course of the past few years, I honestly don't know how many at this point, maybe like 12 campaigns, maybe more, probably more. Yeah, probably more. I lose track because I run a lot. So I run story structured games. I run combat structured games. I run West Marches games. Those are their own unique beast. And it is important, I think, that when I run those games, that when I announce to the world, hey, I'm running these games, that the expectations are there, because I even though I do that, I do get people that show up to the table with different expectations, which is unfortunate. Have you all had that where you ran a campaign with one expectation, but your player showed up with another one?
You take it up, Jamie.
Yeah, I'd say I definitely have. My second one, like I said, because it was people that I didn't know so well, I did start out having a really good time with it. Unfortunately, I think where the expectations were different, um, were just like a level of commitment to the game of expecting um I went from having like a really like passionate group of people who knew their characters inside and out. They knew the game. I as DM um very much leave it to the players to know what their characters do. And so with my second group, I think it was just a group of people who wanted to be a lot more casual about it and didn't know their character abilities so well, and so they were trying to rely on me. And I was like, I I don't know. I don't know what's on your character sheet. And so I think it was just a different level of expectation for like investment in the game. I think I've been lucky. I haven't had an issue where it's like I felt like I was trying to run a very serious game and I just had like really jokester players or vice versa. I haven't had an issue like that. Um, so that's something that I've been lucky with. But yeah, I think that's definitely an experience thing. Is I probably wasn't as clear about the level of like expectations that I had in my game, and that's why things like Session Zero are something that now feature very prominently on what I plan when I plan a new campaign.
Absolutely. What about you?
On my part, since I'm running Death House, well, not Death House, but like Curse of Strahd. I watched like a dozen videos explaining you should tell your players what this is about, because I didn't want players dropping out because it's too somber and depressing. So weeks before we even started the campaign, I explained to them what it was about. I, without giving them any spoilers, I told them we could either start in Dragon Heist or Curse of Strahd, or Dragon Heist and then Curse of Strahd. They didn't know anything about the modules. I didn't give away any names, and they decided to go with Curse of Strahd because I think the geopolitical, intriguing stuff for a first group they didn't want to deal with it. They rather kill some monsters and be done with it. So
Yeah, I mean that's one of the easier ways to start out the hobby is by rolling some dice and going up against some bad guys, right?
yeah.
It's definitely something unique in that you can definitely have newer players show up and they could be super into the RP, or they just don't know, or maybe more often than not, I see that a lot of people are not necessarily uncomfortable, but they're not used to how a role play game can be. a lot of LARPing involved in all that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, I've run my fair share of games. I've tailored them to the players' expectations. I've been doing session zeros since as long as I can remember before like I think the term was even coined really. But or maybe it's been for a while and I just didn't know about it, but it is one of the things where I definitely say, okay, we're playing in a game and there's high lethality, and then people come to the table with these like page-long backstories, and then I feel bad for killing them, and that sucks, right? And then at the same time, I also play in these games or run these games where I want it to be super RP, and then people show up and think it's just lame and want to fight monsters all the time. It's like, well, that sucks. And it's not something I've learned in a single day to temper the expectations, right? It's something that you pick up over time. It's something that you got to pick up. It's something you got to feel out with your players, and that session zero is super important for that. Talking to them, being open about what kind of game you want to run, what kind of game they want to play in, and all that fun stuff. In fact, just recently, I think yesterday, in the Discord, I posted up a link I always give to my players whenever I'm about to run a game, and that shows off some of the games that I plan on running. And these are just like a general little synopsis on the adventure I want to run, and gives a little detail on maybe the levels of the campaign or how many sessions they are. Do you guys think that when you are starting a campaign, do you think that it's good to tell your players, like, okay, this is going to be a 30-session campaign? Or do you think that putting a timer on things is going to somehow affect the style of play your players have?
Um, I don't think. I mean, it probably depends on the campaign. I wouldn't put a timer on it because it depends on the group mainly. It could, if I have a 30-session story, they could do it in 20 or 45, depending on the group. Um, but I do have internal timers. For example, because I do want them to like rush into action, and I want them to see how those timers affect the story and their characters. For example, in session 3 or 2 or something, they battled some werewolf, and two of them got bitten. And I told them, they were freaking out. Of course, they thought they were gonna turn into werewolf overnight. And then they met an NPC that told them what it was about, and it was like, you have 28 days for the full moon until the first transformation, and then you got another 28 until it's irreversible and permanent. So they got 2 months in Curse of Strahd to figure that one out.
That's pretty generous.
Yeah, I wanted to be generous. Yeah.
What about you, Jamie?
Yeah. As far as timers on like an overall campaign, that's definitely not something I've ever done, because I similarly don't know how long it's going to take players to get through certain things, especially because a lot of times you will plan something and you'll be like, oh, this will be easy. They'll get through that. And then it takes the whole session, or, the opposite can happen a lot of the time too.
Yeah, I've sat there and I've prepped for an hour, and then the players blaze through that prep in 10 minutes, and then I prep for 10 minutes, and then it takes, an hour, right? It's impossible to gauge. Players are terrible like that. They ruin everything. Those pesky players.
The games would go so nice if there just weren't these darn players.
Exactly, right? I've been informed that that's a book. So, yeah, so in regards to that, the reason I typically say, okay, this campaign is going to be 20 to 40 sessions is because one, I want to give my players, just a rough estimate. I don't want to make them commit to something that they can't necessarily commit to. Two, it's because I prefer shorter adventures over longer adventures, because I know that if I was trying to emulate Critical Role and do a 150 session campaign, I know I'd be burnt out and all my players would be burnt out, or most of my players anyway. And it's also just a way for me to also shape the story in a way that doesn't stretch it, because Something I suffer from as a DM is I like to add too much, and then I have to sit there and reconcile. Like, okay, if I add too much, then it's going to take forever. So, putting a timer on myself is a way to rein that in. Do you do you all think that when you are starting a campaign that you need to tell your players everything? Like as you mentioned before, you said you gave your players some expectations, but in regards to that, do those expectations need to be fully laid out, or do you think that it's okay to leave there some mystery?
In
On
regards
my
to like the
case,
plot?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
In my case, definitely not. I left everything super vague. They don't know anything about the story. They recently kind of met Strat, and one of them had seen some of that module run by another DM on YouTube. And what I did was, hey, instead of you trying not to meta game, I'm gonna make your character have meta Vistani before. And he told you a little bit about the story, and then you can tell the rest of the party instead of having an NPC tell it. That's fine for me because it's just general stuff that we're gonna find out in maybe 2 more sessions. That's about it. But yeah, in the beginning on the campaign, I didn't tell them. I only told about the mood of the setting and that is very lethal, that is somber, depressing, and that's about it. I didn't go into the specifics.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of similarly to mine, for Dragon Heist, if I could have, I wouldn't have told them the title because there's no real heist in it.
Well.
Uh, not if you put in the work. And as a baby new DM, I was not prepared for that. But as written, I thought it was super fun, and it was the sort of thing where I had like what Gal had said was when you'd come across something that a player character would definitely know, you can go ahead and like take the step back and be like, yeah, you would have met someone like this before, especially because one of my players like backstories fit really, really nicely into Waterdeep. They were a Waterdavian noble. So that was something that worked out really, really well, actually, to be able to communicate. Like, this is the way that the city works, is just not having to, like, explain to the party, like, how it works. It was, like, already built in.
Okay. Yeah.
NFL, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Um, what percentage of your campaigns are modules versus homebrew? How much do you homebrew?
Hmm. I'm trying to think of all the campaigns that I've ran. I've ran quite a few. I want to say probably 75% are modules and 25% are homebrew. But
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I've homebrewed have gone on for an extensive amount of time. Like, for example, being the West Marches game that I ran, the Frontier, went for 82 sessions. Like, that was an absolute clown fiesta with 30 some odd people in it. That was quite a lot. And another thing to consider too is I follow what Chris Perkins says, and I don't run the modules as written. I purposely
Yeah, yeah.
do not run them as written. But I'm still using the modules, so it's not really homebrew. But yeah, so yeah, that's why I say probably around like 25% of the modules or campaigns that I've ran have been homebrew.
Yeah, that's good.
It's unique because I've run a lot of games. In regards to starting these campaigns, I've approached them a number of different ways. There is no universal code for me. Some of them I just say, okay, you're already an established group and you're going somewhere. Or another one is, okay, I'm going to sit down with each individual person and run a one-on-one session with you in that session 0, and it's going to be a fun time. We're going to establish your backstory and the world and da-da-da, this and that. And other ones, it's somewhere in between where we kind of just sit down and somewhat collab together as a group and eventually sit down to play that session 1. And in regards of like when I go the in-depth version, when I do go and have a one-on-one session with each individual person, I truly find that's a really great way to get basically, guild someone into the adventure. They want to. I always give them some sort of hook. I give them some sort of item. I give them a purpose and reason, and I get to riff off of their character before the session even starts. Because something I've noticed is if I'm trying to run a character heavy campaign and I don't do that one on one, then I have to somewhat pick up the pieces along the way. Versus I'd rather do that right from the beginning. Have any of you done a one-on-one with people trying to suss out their motivations and character and all that?
I actually sort of did it in kind of like a weird way because I had a character who the player was sick and couldn't make it to that game. So in game, I was like, okay, she's come down with a fever, she's unresponsive. That's why, she's not participating right now. And so then what I ended up doing was giving the character these like prophetic, cryptic fever dreams. And so that was really fun to be able to sort of like feed some of the like themes that they were going to encounter later on in the campaign and kind of be able to influence what was going to happen by giving a character kind of like a little look behind the curtain of stuff like what's coming up. And it was super fun, I think, for the player too, because it's like, oh, I have like the secret knowledge, and they were really excited to be able to be like, then later encountering what was happening, being like, I've seen this.
Yeah, so Galad, have you done one-on-ones to rope people in, or do you just throw them all in the grinder?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I did the one-on-one before the campaign started to create the characters and try to. Some of them already had great hooks. Some of them I had to push a little bit, so because they were like, "Yeah, this is my background. I'm a noble, and pretty much that." So I needed for them to have something else that would push them to go for adventure.
Okay.
And then after the campaign started, I did the Madame Eva dream hook. After they had already met, they were all sleeping in an inn, different rooms, and they all had the dream at the same night. All the dreams were different, but some of them were foreshadowing stuff that were going to happen. Like some of them met the children from Death House in the dream, and
Okay.
when they met them, they were like, "Whoa, whoa!" They were freaking out, and yeah, some of them also I put in the dream stuff from their past and a lot of stuff that I was gonna put in the campaign that was about their character's story, like NPCs and stuff that they were looking for, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of like getting to know a character and like giving them information like that. That's the super fun sort of thing that I definitely want to do more of next time I run a campaign.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when it comes to those narrative games, I definitely try and push for that. I'm also DMing some not so narrative games. Like I'm about to be starting up another West Marches game, and that I don't care about your backstory. You're gonna die, so screw you. But it is interesting to see those relationships build up over time, and that is another thing I wanted to talk to you all about. Is we all know that when it comes to D&D, we have the groups of people that show up to a campaign and then make a character. And then there's also the groups of people that show up to a campaign already with a character. So, in regards to that, do you allow that? Do you allow them to, bring this character that they've already cooked up, in their minds? Or do you say, hey, maybe you should temper your character to the campaign that we're playing here?
Um, I try to be as permissive as possible. If they have a character they've been wanting to play for a long time, I let them do it, and then I try to put stuff in their backstories if they want to, if they allow it, and they think it's cool. That will then be a part of my campaign. If it's really difficult to integrate it, most of the time is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've yeah, when it's something like that where it's like they bring a character and it's like, okay, this will work. Definitely perfectly fine if it fits into the campaign. I have had it happen though where someone brings in their level one character who their backstory is they killed an entire uh like tribe full of orcs who killed their parents, and it's like, I don't think your character did this. And
But they
so
got hit on
just
the
having
head and they
to,
lost other abilities.
yeah, just kind of like reining things in, like, okay, just kind of like scale it back a little. Um, maybe one orc from a distance.
Yeah, it's one of those
uh,
things, right? When you look at the characters, whatever role playing game it is, more often than not, a level 1 character sucks. Like you're not a hero,
oh
you're
yeah,
just you're a peasant, pretty much. And it's interesting because a lot of people nowadays are coming up with these, awesome elaborate backstories of, oh, the king betrayed me and I killed the guards and this and that. And more often than not, the character sheet does not reflect what you could have possibly done. So it does suck to have to temper expectations sometimes, but you do have to be realistic. And I'll tell you what, I definitely appreciate when players show up to the table not with a character that they need to play. I need to play this character. I like when people show up to the table and say, "Oh, hey, okay, we're playing this campaign. What's the location like? Maybe my character's influenced by here, and oh, hey, we're dealing with these kind of themes. Maybe if we're dealing with horror, I'm not gonna bring Skippy Dippy, the happy-go-lucky gnome, right? So I think it is important to sit down and have those conversations with players, saying that certain characters are awesome and some characters may not sit well. In regards to that, right? I've definitely seen that where you try to run a horror campaign and then skibbity bop whatever the gnome shows up, and
it's always a gnome.
it's always a gnome because the names are great, right? Yeah, for
Yeah, I
example,
have one, but it's a halfling.
what's the name?
The name Castiel.
Castile. See, that's a lot better than Skibbity Bop or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I ran in that West Marches campaign that I ran. It was definitely a lot more of a hardcore feel, and a lot of people started getting goofy with it because they knew player death was expected around every corner. Over the course of 82 sessions, 79 PC deaths, so close to 1-for-1 average, so close. But one of the most famous deaths from that campaign was dear old Dopey, the lovable, gnome that couldn't roll higher than an 8 for any stat. So,
Ooh, ooh,
yeah, there's a reason why he died. There's a reason.
wow.
And it is important you sit there and, especially if you're running a game for a lot of people, you have to sit there and temper those expectations of, okay, I definitely want to keep it within the realm of possibility. I don't want to go off the rails because your players are the driving force of the campaign, of the story, and if they show up with different thematics than everything else, then your story can unravel to a way that you don't want. When it
Yeah,
comes, yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, like, not to like disparage the like, kind of overpowered level one character. It is really nice when someone shows up and they have the passion for the game, like
Oh,
they're
for sure.
really excited. That's definitely something to try and like keep alive while also being like, we got to tone this down just a little bit though.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things, again, that you have to temper those expectations. And, I hate ruining players' hopes and dreams. My name is no fun allowed, but that's, I hope it's a meme. I hope it's not, real. But, I don't want to have someone at the table say, like, oh, man, but I really want to do this. And me saying, like, oh, it doesn't work. It sucks to do that. It stings. And, I want to allow for that creative freedom and liberty, but at the same time, like, you also have to consider if one person is trying to push something, what are the other people going to push for? What do the other people want out of the game? And, as much as we talked about the giving away the players' expectations, it's also important that the players give their own expectations about what they want out of the game. You know, during that session 0, it's you as a DM are also a player. You know, you're all sitting around and you're trying to collaborate and have fun. And I think that's, you know, a huge deal about that session 0 checklist. You know, whether you come up with your own checklist or you use one of the many found online. Speaking of, do any of you have a, you know, go-to session 0 checklist?
I had been putting one together a year ago when I was planning a campaign before everything happened.
Yeah.
And so I was actually just looking through it. And it's funny though, because now that Tasha's has come out and there's a lot of good advice in that about session 0, I'm gonna have to eventually dust that old list that I made off and definitely update it for the things like talking about like the potential triggers, which definitely comes up in Candlekeep Mysteries. Things that like you want to make sure that your party is going to be okay with the content that you're going to be DMing, making sure that the tone is going to be okay with them and things like that. So I have a checklist, but it's old.
Okay. What about you, Galad?
I'm very scatterbrained. I did put a list together. I watched countless videos on session 0, and then I did the thing. And then when I showed up we started out online thing. Um, I showed up and I didn't even know where the paper was. And then I did what I remembered. But luckily, I had been talking to them about it. We have a WhatsApp group. And we talk there. And I've been telling them what to expect along 3 weeks before we even started. But yeah, it was kind of messy. And then half the session 0 was talking about that, talking about the expectations and whatnot, and the mood, and some homebrew rules I wanted to implement. And then the other half was throwing them into the adventure and getting each other to meet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think. For the majority of groups, I do have a checklist, one that I've been using for quite some time. But in regards of like some of the groups, one of my groups that I've been running for a long time, I typically skip over the boring stuff for that session 0 because they already know what's up. I already know what they all want. They tell me all the time anyway, so we don't really need it. We can kind of glance over it. Session 0 for that one particular group is more along the lines of, oh, hey, what character are you making? Oh, I'm making this. It's like, oh, cool, perfect. You know, and that one's really simple. But for definitely, if I'm running for other people that I haven't been DMing for quite some time, especially newer players, then for sure it's really good to get that expectations out there and make sure that no one's stepping over any lines. Make sure that I'm not stepping over any lines. You know, and you know, it's important to put yourself out there because, you know, you as the DM, you have this weird, for some reason you have to be the air quote face of the party. You've got to do all this work. I say screw all that. I think everyone should be putting in as much effort into making the group work as everybody else. But, you know, it's just one of those things, I guess. So yeah, we talked a lot about making these campaigns starts and trying to kick them off. I was going to ask you all, what are your favorite campaign starts? But it sounds like we are working with a little experience here. So Galad, you've only run the one campaign, so you have your
Yeah.
start. Jamie, you didn't even start a campaign. You've only started one campaign because you
Yeah.
inherited the other one.
I definitely would like to do the next time I run something a hot start. The roll for initiative once you hit the table, because like just because I haven't done it yet, and it would be really cool to get a feel for how that would be for like a setting the tone for how this campaign's gonna go.
Yeah.
If I start a new campaign, I definitely have a starting I want to try out, and is everyone is either in prison or they're slaves or some kind, and they have to scatter and find a way out.
Yeah.
And maybe they meet each other and they find a couple tools they can use and try to escape.
Yeah, that's a great team building exercise, right? Your
Hmm.
players have to work together. No lone wolfing the prison escape, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my most favorite campaign start. I've had, once again, I've DM'd too many games at this point. Um, I think one of my most favorite starts was I was running TOA, Tomb of Annihilation, and I told in all my session zeros with all those players, I told them, hey, you're gonna show up to this location at this day. And one of the players showed up and they said, okay, that's perfect. I'm just going to show up. I'm not going to bring any of my gear. It's just a polite, kind meeting. And then when they go to that meeting, they get teleported all the way halfway across the continent. And he left all of his gear, and he was basically just naked. He just had the clothes on his back. So that intertwined with the whole beginning of the campaign, which was a fantastic campaign start. I love TOA's campaign start. It's a ton of fun. And yeah, in regards to that too, is I'm also running these West Marches games where it's drop in, drop out, anybody can show up, and those don't have actual campaign starts because realistically, not everyone showed up at the very first session, right? It's just not happening.
Mm.
But but for a campaign start, as in you showing up for the first time, we definitely saw a lot of explosive starts, a lot of great first sessions of, hey, welcome to the game, you're dead. Roll up a new character. And I can't wait to replicate that again because I'll be starting up my new West Marches fairly soon. So, yeah, we talked a lot about awesome campaign starts, how to do them, where to go, what to do. And I think that there is just no formulaic way to do it. I think you got to find what's right for you. You got to talk to people. You got to put your expectations out there, and you got to just say your piece, and you got to make it memorable. Before we go, do you guys have anything last to say?
Oh, thank you for having us, and I think your channel is great, and I can't wait to see how it grows in the future.
Thank you.
The opposite.
Well, you cancel each other out, so it's fine.
No, yeah, this was a really good talk. It's definitely, I think, really valuable to hear other people's perspectives on like how they've started, what they've done, what worked, what didn't work. And it's really, really valuable to be able to, go on YouTube, go on Discord, and share these kinds of experiences. So yeah, thanks for having a roundtable where we're able to do this sort
Heck
of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, join these communities because I promise you're not alone. There is hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of other DMs that are sharing in your plight from these terrible players that are ruining everything. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to my amazing patrons. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. See ya!